There, I'm Blackbright, broadcasting out of the UK. Welcome to my channel. Today, I wanted to talk about the writing on the wall because I think a lot of us, we kind of sense what's happening with regard to why we are the way we are. And yet, a lot of us are silent. And I was trying to examine why that is. Yes, we know that there are people who remind us all the time about our history and the impact it has on us and how it's translated and interpreted and how that feeds down to the generations. And I'm probably just going over the same thing over and over again, reinventing the wheel, so they say. But I just wanted, I don't know if I'm doing this for you or for me, but I just wanted to kind of air some thoughts so that hopefully there's something in what I say that may not have been said before. It could well have been, and I might have missed it, or maybe it's what I've picked up. Anyway, long and short of it, I'm going to just go through my notes. I'm going to share with you my thoughts and my feelings. And if you want to subscribe, you can. If you want to share, all of that kind of bump. I mean, to be honest, people will automatically subscribe if they're feeling inclined to. I don't think us YouTubers need to say subscribe, share, like, because I think it's an automatic thing that people do when they're interested in a subject. So, the writing is on the wall. It has been for ages, but we keep walking past it without looking. Education has always been threatening in black households in particular. If you don't learn, you're going to get too lick. And that is how education has been kind of transferred to us. It's never been something that's exciting. It's never been something where we feel eager to learn. It's always been under threat almost. You better get good grades. You have to get this. Education. It's never been brought over in a way where we feel eager. Maybe not all of us, but we never feel eager to learn. And I think that's been our downfall. I think the way that education has been inflicted on us is instrumental in how we relate to it and how we kind of think, oh, well, education is boring. It's not helping me. It's not going to get me a job. And all those negatives. But it's ironic that all the famous leaders, and I'm going to give you some of them today, press on education. Why do they press on education? Not the education, the Western education we get into schools. They are talking about our own education because we have been miseducated over the years. We haven't been taught anything that we can relate to. And so as a result, we find it a bit irrelevant. It's not interesting. It's much more interesting to go and check a gal or go and chat with a man, or the opposite sex is much more interesting. And that's how it was at school and further education. Normally kids go to university to meet someone, to get a boyfriend, to go to all of their proms and all that kind of stuff. It's never really about education. You have the minority that really take education seriously. But the majority of us, we just see it as a chore. And because we see it as a chore, we are confined. We cannot emancipate ourselves because we don't know enough. We listen to what people tell us. We don't do our own research. We don't investigate. We don't examine. We're not curious. And it holds us back. So, there were always repercussions for bad grades. So, like I said, it wasn't seen as enjoyable. And we had no positive role models or goal models in school. I mean, when you think of, Shakespeare and Chaucer, I mean, what has that got to do with us? What has that got to do with our past? Yes, we had to learn it in order to pass our grades and to get an A level or whatever. But it was never made interesting. It was really a chore. And I think that is why Black people in particular steered away from education. I think if it had been more interesting, more relevant, we'd have a different class of people today. So education was distorted and made uninteresting for certain mindset. Black people have been studied for centuries, their habits, their likes, their dislikes. They know. So, the system or those people who want to market blacks or want to exploit blacks or want to, well, I'll leave it with those two for now. But those people who study our habits and try to, I don't even know what the word is. I'm not going to say manipulate them, but it's a way of studying us to get the most out of us. So, for example, if they know what makes us tick is material things, nice cars, nice clothes, money in our pockets, they're going to frame whatever it is they're advertising towards that, so that we can get caught up in those short-term goals, that short-term satisfaction. We don't know what's happening. Of course we don't. We just go on willy-nilly, see something nice. If the white man can have it, me can have it too. If a white man can drive a nice car, me can drive a nice car too. And we don't look at those who are sacrificing all of those nice things, putting their money aside so they can have something later. Instead, as the sociologists say, and what seems to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, we seek for immediate gratification. And that is our downfall. Getting something now, enjoying something now, and it's reinforced with the Bible. Live for today, for tomorrow we die. And so that is the Black mindset most of the time. Immediate gratification. If it's immediate gratification, the marketing people, whether it's got to be ethnic, campaign or whatever, they know how to market to get us to spend our money. So when they pay us, all we're doing is giving it back to them. And so in fact, we're working for free, because money doesn't stay in our pockets very long. And by the time you turn around, it's that we've spent it. And whereas certain people will invest and they don't spend their money unless they're going to get something back, Black people will spend their money and knowing that what they're going to get back will be out of date or out of fashion within a year. They buy a nice car from you, unless it's a classic, from you leave the showroom, it's lost value. So it's the mindset. It's the way we've been trained and over the years to look good, to smell sweet. It's like we are ornaments almost, ornaments of society that people look at and say, boy, them look nice, or she looks nice, but no substance. Where is the substance? Where is what's up here? It's not interesting enough. Too lazy to learn, too lazy to read, too lazy to educate yourself to do better, too lazy to find out what it is about the society, why you only reach a certain level before you have to step back and start all over again. It's all out there. It's not that a Black person cannot achieve what they want to achieve. It's the way the mindset has been conditioned and the way people go along with their mindset. They don't, a lot of them, not all of them, of course not all of them, but a lot of them, they don't think. They don't realize that they're actually being controlled. I mean, they look at other people and saying they're puppets, but they don't realize that they're being controlled themselves. And so as a result, they fall right into the trap, whether it's short-term gratification whether it's riling up to get angry and lose your temper so that they can say you're aggressive, whether it's to dull your senses so that they can say, oh yes, you have no intelligence, whatever it is. Black people tend not to, not all black people, I shouldn't say black people, some black people, they just go along with the flow and don't stop to think about what they're doing and why they're doing it. They don't have that sense of self-reflection. It is so important to self-reflect. Why am I here? What am I doing here? Why am I in this situation? How can I make my situation better? What is it? Why this thing keeps happening to me over and over again? It's like people in relationships. If you operate in the same way, you're going to get the same result, regardless of who you're with. And it's the same with life. If you keep operating on the same mantra every day, which is woe is me or whatever it is, you're going to have the same result. So it is about re-educating. It really is. I mean, and education doesn't have to be boring anymore. You don't have to, you can actually get all of the sources from YouTube or whichever way, any source you want. And it can be relevant to you. You can specialize in what you want to specialize in. An academic isn't about going to university. You don't have to pay to be an academic. You can actually self-study. There are so many self-learned professors and honorary doctors. You can still become one of them. And it will give you a sense of self-worth. But to see the writing on the wall, complain every day how you are subjugated and how you're oppressed and all of that, and not trying to get out of that by re-educating yourself and understand what is going on, understand why it's happening, you're going to end up in the same place. That's all I'm saying. So it's easy to exploit black people and to capitalize on black culture because we are easily tempted. Some people think, oh, the Africans who sold out other Africans way back in the slavery days, they'd say, oh, they were ignorant, they didn't know this and that. People today are no better because they are not willing to take the time and better themselves, better their understanding about life. They sit and they listen to the news, and I'm not just talking about black people, this is a lot of people in general. They sit, they listen to the news, and they absorb it. They absorb everything that's going on like sponges. Nobody stops to examine. Nobody stops to think. They don't use their brain. There's no curiosity. And you see with white people who have power, why they have power is because they study. They study people. They study habits. They know if they do this, they're gonna get that result. And they spend their time learning and reading and educating themselves about a lot of different things about human nature. So they know if they press that button, they're going to get that result. So the majority of us are puppets on a string. We're all robots just singing to their tune. And we're there complaining about A, B, C, D, and E, and none of us are looking to see how we can improve this situation, how we can understand what is going on, what is the bigger picture. Some people latch on to conspiracy theories because it's a cop-out, it's an easy way out. Oh, I'll listen to that conspiracy theory, that seems to make sense. Let me latch on to that. And then they'll emulate that and share it and talk about it as though it's their truth. When it is somebody talking about something that seems to make sense to them. But if they haven't done the groundwork, if they haven't done the investigation, they're just repeating somebody else's story and somebody else's truth. And it's not theirs. So you have to work out, what do I want to know? What is going to benefit me? And how is it going to benefit me? No point sitting around and listening to gossip and listening to what people say about COVID, about 5G, whatever it is. Do your own investigation so you have some authority and you have some conviction within yourself about what you've picked up about a particular topic. It doesn't even have to be about black people. You can specialize in anything. But it's about having knowledge and knowing why you are confined, knowing why things are the way, knowing why you feel exploited, taken for granted, not respected. And until you reach a point where you are knowledgeable and you can answer questions and you can stand up and say, hang on a minute, that doesn't make sense. And you can ask questions and you can do it in a civil manner. You're going to stay there where you are without having any kind of way of getting out of it. Next thing you know, you'll see them all come trampling on us with their boots. Our poor children are screaming and we're silent because we haven't got any answers, because we were too lazy to find out what the answers were. So we do need to do some groundwork. So black people are constantly shown as being patrons of wealth, not creators of wealth over history. And we do know that we can, if we change our mindset. And it's not even about short-term gratification, because if you spend your money wisely, you can do both. Your long-term strategy will help fulfill your short-term. So if you invest wisely, you'll be able to get those things that you want. So British and American history teaches that black people are only useful for providing wealth to others. And that is what happens. As slaves, we made the slave owners wealthy. Now, if you're working, whether you're whether you're in the entertainment industry or the sports industry or the arts, you're making money for someone else. When you're spending money on your expensive clothes, you're making money for someone else. And that's why they say black people is $1 billion industry. Even if you stop spending, it doesn't really matter, because do you know, for every inmate that's in jail, that's £119 a day per inmate. So black people they say that black people are disproportionately in prison. So you've got black people making the money in prison while locked up. Not only while they're locked up, because they've been criminalized. They're not all criminals, but because they've been criminalized, whether or not you've been arrested and they found you falsely arrested, it takes away your vote. And a lot of people will say, a lot of black people in particular, I vote. What's the point of voting? And they don't listen. Look what's happened. Look at the state of the world and all that. Some of them, they don't even want to vote. The majority of them don't want to vote. Oh, what's the point? I'm not putting my name on any electoral register because all they want to do is find out my business. They know your bloody business. But your voice makes a difference. And you have the opportunity to vote and you don't. And yet so many people's right to vote has been taken away because they're in mental institutions, because they're in prison, because they're in detention centres, because they have got a criminal record at some point in their lives. All of those voices, all of those black people don't have a voice. And yet those who do are so complacent. I ain't going to vote because of A, B, C, D, and E. Some excuse. And then they turn around and say, oh, well, look what's happening to us. Look what's happening to us. Black people underestimate their power. And I'm not talking about black power with a fist. That is, that doesn't mean anything. That's just an image. That just looks aggressive. But what is behind it? Where's the intelligence behind it? What are you getting out of that? When you say black power, what is that? If you can't string two words together, if you can't get money together, if you can't build businesses, if you can't build empires, What is the point? What is the point of saying Black Lives Matter if you're not going to make a difference? And you're just going to sit there and watch it or protest, and you're not doing something within your family to make things better. Yes, the system is against you a lot of the time, but it was against our ancestors. It was against those in the Windrush. Did it stop them? No, it didn't. It didn't stop them. And yes, we have a lot of policies that are designed to restrict. We know that. We also know that families have been broken up deliberately. The government has managed families so that, especially to do away with the man. So if the woman gets married and she's in a bind and she's not working, she's not going to get any money if she's married or if she has a partner. So if she's that way inclined and she's looking for her own survival, she's going to say, I don't want a man. So the system is designed to break down the families. So you have to learn to build the families. You have to try and think to yourself, how can we sustain relationships so they don't get broken at the first hurdle? And I was, a lot of women, they finish with their men because they've been unfaithful or they've done some stupidness. And I was watching this movie and it was talking about the woman in the dressing gown. And this woman wore a dressing gown day in, day out, and she tried to fix up the house, but she was so clumsy and helpless, and she was forever making mistakes. And she wore this dressing gown all the time, and her husband came in until he got so fed up, he started having an affair. And the woman said to her husband, look, will you bring whoever it is over for this evening? I want to talk to her. And what she decided to do was to go to the hair salon, make herself look nice, provide a nice meal, put on a nice dress so she could welcome her husband and his missus into the house and have a discussion on why she wants to take her husband away. It so happened she pawned her engagement ring to go and do her hair. It started raining, all her hair mashed up after she paid for it. The dress she went to put on because she was rushing, the zip broke. And by the time the husband and the young lady came to the house, she had drunk the whiskey that she had bought for them to drink and she was flat out. My point is that she managed to talk to the woman and say to her, why would a young, beautiful woman like you want my husband? My husband, do you know that he snores? Do you know that he wants a lot of sauce on his thing? What you see is not what I get. And what was happening in that situation was where a woman, she was very young, much younger than his wife, young and beautiful, and she'd seen a man at work and she was attracted to him. She didn't know all of his habits. But what I'm trying to say is that woman never said to her husband, get out, I don't want you, I don't need you. She actually was willing to reason with the woman. Anyway, the woman wouldn't reason with her. She still wanted the woman's husband. But because of the determination of the wife and the fact that she told the woman how much she knew her husband and they'd been together for 20 years, when that husband walked out down the road to leave with that woman, he just turned back and came back to his wife. And they spoke as though nothing had happened. She never chastised him and said, boy, you can go back to your woman or horrible, that kind of stuff. All I'm saying really is that we have to learn to build and we have to learn to overcome challenges and we have to learn not to fall at the first hurdle. Because if we are looking for short-term gratification, whether it's in money or relationships, we're not going to have anything long-lasting and we're not going to have a legacy. And the world will forever prey on our weakness and our ability to be manipulated and tempted over things that have no lasting value. Sociology teaches black people cannot keep money. They have to spend it. They're short-sighted. They live for today. I'm not going to read all of this. Funny thing is that money is not really power. People are power. Because if people refuse to buy or spend, how would the entrepreneurs and the men with property get their money? So people underestimate their power. And even if you don't have any power monetarily, I mean, there's always this image of poverty and destitution. But supposing you decided not to spend your money, what do you think would happen to the world? What do you think would happen to the economy? People underestimate their power. So if you can make sacrifices like that, knowing you have that power, wouldn't it make sense to use your money more wisely? It is important and quite strategic why the image of a black person as being poor is perpetuated in history and via the national curriculum to keep that image current. Black historians are having to dig deep to discover black kings and queens and black scientists and civil engineers and technicians and doctors. Is there a way we can reflect black African, black American and black history, marry it all up together under one umbrella? I wonder what that would look like. I mean, we've got a host of historians. Instead of operating separately, wouldn't it be fantastic if they could produce something? If they all got together, amalgamated their ideas and their researches, and each person covered a different area to make one solid black history book. That would be our reference material. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Instead of we having all these people, all scattered all over the place, doing their own thing. So, what else have I got? There are moves to rename Black History Month to Multicultural Month or Diversity Month. But I think the whole point about Black history is that parts of it has been omitted, parts of it have been contrived, and it's so important to get at the truth because without Black history, there is no world history. Black history is such an integral part of world history, and that is what young people need to know. Instead of having this false image that they played no part in it apart from slavery. Yes, slavery was a part of it and a very devastating part, but black people were impactful in a lot of other ways. And it's those other ways that people should be looking at to see what can make them feel better about themselves instead of denying who they are or feeling embarrassed about who they are or feeling embarrassed about their legacy. A lot of black people, they feel so embarrassed about their legacy, and that's why they don't feel worthy. They don't feel worthy to stand up for anything. Some of them, because they feel that white people are worthy and valuable, they attach themselves to them. Instead of, I'm not saying that's the only reason they attach themselves to them, but a lot of them feel that by being associated with a white person, it gives them more kudos because they haven't managed to love themselves. And the legacy that is behind them is so embarrassing. They don't want to be associated with it. Anyway, let's look at what some of the famous leaders say. A people without knowledge of their history and culture is like a tree without roots. That's Marcus Garvey, we all know that. So imagine if your history has been distorted and you do not see images of yourself reflected in the history book. It would mean that you only have what you are taught to rely on. If that image is contrived so that it is negative, it means that your self-esteem would be low. You would feel like a fish out of water. You would feel dependent. You would have no roots. For this reason, it is important to know your history and not just absorb the distorted history taught in schools. John Henry Clark said, he's an American historian, if you want to control a people, you must control what they think about themselves. And history does a good thing with that, especially British history and American history, because how that controls how we think about ourselves, because when they're showing history, they're only showing blacks as slaves or in an subordinate role. They're not showing an accurate history. They're not showing those parts of history where black people were in control, where black people reigned countries, where black people built pyramids, where black people were scientists. They don't show that aspect of history because they want to control how we as black people feel about ourselves. Because if they can damage, or if they can make us feel damaged, that means they have the power, because that is why they'll say that they are supreme and they are superior, because the way black people think about themselves is inferior, and it's through indoctrination over the years, and it's through the images, and it's perpetuated through films, media, and everything else. So you have to think about what John Henry Clark said. If you want to control a people, you must control what they think about themselves. What do you think about yourself? John Henry Clark got suspicious when he could not see any reflections of himself in printed media and decided to investigate. As a young person, it never occurred to me to question where black people were in history. I took it for granted. What I read is what I saw. It never even occurred to me to think, oh, where were the black people in history? I mean, when I was, maybe that's why I've got 1 out of 100. Maybe subconsciously I couldn't relate to it. But I don't think I ever consciously questioned the fact that there was no black people in history books apart from in a derogatory role. John Henry Clark's curious mind helped him to discover that the history of black people was worldwide. Black people do need to recognise that slavery, although devastating, was not the beginning or the end of their impact on the world. Once they realise this and seek to discover their positive impact, it will change how they think about themselves and ultimately change their outcomes. Incidentally, you might notice that there's more adverts. This is what YouTube has done. They've decided we don't have a choice, because I never used to click on adverts, but we don't have a choice anymore. So you're probably going to be inundated, but I hope it doesn't put you off the content. Anyway, supposing we have been programmed to be associated with slavery, poverty, exploitation, imprisonment, and death, how do you think that would make you feel inside? If that's the only image you're shown or associated with, it can't make you feel good. You are going to think, oh, the world is against me. And supposing it's in someone's best interest that we think bad about ourselves. If you do not question your history, you will forever feel like a victim. And how might that play out today? Well, it plays out that you have a chip on your shoulder. You may feel as though the world is against you. You may feel as though you have less opportunities. You'll lose motivation and inspiration. You may turn to crime. You may give up. You may make substandard choices, and you may sabotage success. So, cashing in on blackness. Is that due to miseducation? How does it benefit those who distort our story? Once again, it is about cashing in on black people. When you think about it, that's what all of this is about. All this unfair treatment, all of this trying to make us feel inferior, making us feel less than. It's all about cashing in on black people. So England does not want to be a migrant country. So to compensate, they have got to benefit to justify having them here. And how do they do that? Well, they make us know that our presence in the UK is conditional on good behaviour. Slavery is over, so what do they do now? They enslave through prisons and make money in the process, £115 a day per inmate, which translates into £43,213 a year per inmate. And they make £3.4 billion a year on inmates. So why do you think they're chucking them all in jail? And that's out of our taxpayers' money. So they're criminalised, so they're unable to vote. I've already said that. No voice, no rights, no difference. Paid less to make them work harder, control their movements through immigration control, visa, health surcharges. The Windrush that, of course, affected the black working class because the black middle class were able to pay for lawyers. Perpetuating negative images of Africa, of disease and famine that will subconsciously make certain black people want to disassociate from Africa. And they've also got this ethnic marketing communications company called Gotta Be Ethnic that specializes in multicultural marketing and campaigns and helping companies target people of color. So they make money off of entertainment, sport, arts, exploiting the predictability of black people. So why not become unpredictable? When people rile you up, instead of rising to the bait, why not behave in the opposite way? Why are black people so predictable? So, and then to agitate the situation, they make immigration synonymous with uncontrolled migration, instilling resentment and fear in unwoke white people. Can't pay, we'll send you away. Those people on the dole or who aren't contributing, another way of making them feel as though they're not welcome. Whereas when you watch, Benefit Street, my God, I saw one family, one guy, he was married, he had 14 kids, 8-bedroom house in this posh area. Big, like a bus he had been awarded. Nobody says anything about that. And on top of that, a couple of them were disabled, so he was getting extra benefits. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. That is the words of Bob Marley. Inspired by Marcus Garvey, who said that a man who is not able to develop and use his mind is bound to be the slave of the other man who uses his mind. If you do not use your mind, if you do not use your brain, somebody out there will exploit you, will take advantage of you. And it's the mind that is confining you and preventing you from liberation. It's not the people, it's not the white man, it's your mind and your perception of what is out there. We live in a world of lazy minds, can't be bothered to read or educate ourselves, not interested in learning the truth. Instead, we accept words of others and so will be governed by other people's truths and not our own. Education is a means of sharpening the mind of man, both spiritually and intellectually. That is the words of Haile Selassie. Sharpening the mind, both spiritually and intellectually. Do you know how powerful you feel when you know something? Or if you specialize in something? Do you know how Akala and Kahinde Andrews and all of those guys, I had them all listed here somewhere, but all of those people who have knowledge, do you know how powerful they feel when they're invited on a platform to speak about a subject and they can speak it out and they can respond to all of these questions? Do you know how powerful they feel? They feel so powerful. And how did they learn it? By reading. It's in your power to read, to learn, to educate. That is there's nobody taking that away from you. There's nobody saying you can't read books, you can't learn from YouTube. Maybe by the time you listen to this, it might even be too late. YouTube might be stopped. You might not be able to go to the library. You might not be able to learn. You have the privilege to learn for free. and liberate yourself from mental slavery. And yet a lot of people are just too lazy and laid back and can't be bothered. So it is time to stop rebelling against ourselves and our parents. Many of us are sabotaging our lives through laziness, lack of interest, resentment and frustration. But the power is within us all. The writing is on the wall. I think a lot of us did do that because our parents gave us such a hard time about education. We're like, it's not going to benefit me. Well, how do I benefit from this? How do I benefit from that? And you become rebellious. And as a result, you become confined. You're confining yourself. Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. Those are the words of Malcolm X. You see all these big leaders, these great leaders, all put kudos on education. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. That's Nelson Mandela. In the end, we will not remember the voices of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. That's Martin Luther King. So are you going to stand by and watch the world go down and you with it? Watch your children suffer because you decided to be silent, because you decided not to learn, because you decided not to make a stand, because you decided that education is not important and it's not relevant to you. So few stand up for what they believe. When the shit hits the fan and your children are screaming for help, they will hate you for your silence. We can be our own worst enemies, fighting against outdated mythologies and values and not working things out for ourselves. We must take charge of our lives and learn what there is to learn. There is no excuse. And when you have the armory of information, then you can decide how it can benefit you. You don't need money to learn. You don't need a degree to become an academic. You just need thirst for discovery, a curious mind and some passion, and the will to put thoughts in action. And that is the trait those who oppress the oppressible have to their advantage or use to their advantage. If you're happy to have your history photoshopped, stay as you are. If not, do something about it and stop fighting against old rules and values and do something to make yourself feel better about yourself. And that's all for now. Bye-bye.